The sky burns crimson over Mordor as the dark tower collapses into ruin, its shadow lifting for the first time in ages. Can you hear it? The distant cries of orcs, scattering like embers in the wind, their world crumbling with every thunderous crack of falling stone. Tonight, we step into the ashes of Sauron's dominion, not to recount the triumph of heroes, but to follow those left behind, the forgotten, the feared. The orcs, now adrift in a world that despises them. Where do creatures of shadow go when the light returns? And what becomes of a people forged for war when war is lost? I'd love to know where you're listening from right now, whether it's the quiet hush of midnight or the golden glow of evening. Let us know in the comments below, and let's begin this journey together. Picture Gorza, an orc captain with a voice ragged from shouting orders over the chaos. Her armor is dented, her hands trembling not from fear of battle, but from the terrifying weight of what comes next. Without Sauron's iron grip, her kin are more than leaderless. They are hunted. The free peoples celebrate their hard-won peace, but for the orcs, survival is no longer a matter of strength. It's a question of reinvention. Will they fade into the darkness they were born from, or carve a path no one expects? The answer lies in the choices of those like Gorza, standing at the edge of a broken land, daring to imagine a future beyond the shadow of the ring. This isn't just a tale of aftermath, it's a story of identity. What happens when the purpose you were made for vanishes? When the chains of destiny shatter, and you're left with only the echoes of who you were told to be. Tonight, we'll wander the scorched plains of Mordor, through hidden caves and whispered alliances, to uncover the untold fate of the orcs. Some will seek redemption, others revenge, and a few might just discover something far more surprising: hope. So settle in, close your eyes, and let the whispers of Middle-earth's twilight carry you away. The fire has dimmed, but the embers still glow, and their light reveals secrets even the wise might have missed. Gorza's breath comes heavy with the stench of sulfur as she stands atop a jagged outcrop, her scarred face illuminated by the dying fires of Mount Doom. Below her, the remnants of Sauron's legions, once a tide of terror, now mill like lost pups. Their armor dented, their weapons dull. The air crackles with tension, a storm waiting to break. She raises her jagged blade, its edge glinting in the hellish glow, and the murmurs die to a restless silence. "You know me," she growls, her voice rough as gravel. "I led you through the Black Gate's charge. I bled beside you in the ash pits. And now, while the soft folk dance on our ruin, I say we don't crawl into the dark to rot." A ripple moves through the crowd, some nodding, others snarling. Then Erzog shoves forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the others. "Why follow you?" He spits, clenching a spiked club. Sauron's gone, the war's lost. What's left but starving or swinging axes at each other? Gorza doesn't flinch. She leaps down, landing inches from him, her gaze locked on his. "Because I see what you don't," she snaps. "The world thinks we're beasts. Let's prove them wrong, or prove them right, your choice." The challenge hangs in the air, thick as smoke. For the first time in their bloody history, an orc isn't claiming power through fear alone. She's offering something far more dangerous, a future. Erzog's grip tightens on his club. Then, with a grunt, he steps back. Not in surrender, In calculation, the others watch, eyes gleaming like coals. Gorza's first victory isn't won with steel. It's won with the one thing orcs were never meant to have, a choice. The clash erupts in a storm of steel and fury, Gorza's axe meeting Erzog's with a ringing crash that sends sparks flying into the sulphurous air. This isn't just a fight for leadership. It's a battle for the very soul of their kind. Erzog swings with the raw power of a lifetime spent in war, every blow meant to crush, to dominate. But Gorza dances aside, her movements sharp and calculated, her strikes precise. She fights like an orc unchained, not from Sauron's will, but from the old ways of blind brutality. The crowd circles them, a sea of scarred faces and gleaming eyes, their breath held as the dust swirls. When Erzog overextends, Gorza pivots, her axe hooking his leg and sending him crashing to the ground. The moment hangs, thick with expectation. The old law demands his death. But Gorza steps back, lowering her weapon. Killing you gains me nothing, she rasps, her chest heaving. But your strength, that could build something new. The silence is deafening. Orcs don't spare. Orcs don't bargain. Yet here she stands, rewriting the rules with every word. Erzog's nostrils flare, his pride warring with something unfamiliar respect. Slowly, he rises, then kneels, his fist striking the earth in a gesture none of them have ever seen. It's not submission, it's alliance. The crowd erupts in growls and cheers, but beneath the noise, Gorza catches the mutters of dissent. Soft, one sneers, she'll get us all killed. Another hisses, she knows time is short. The free peoples won't leave Mordor's ashes unguarded for long. If her kin are to survive, they must become more than scattered warbands squabbling over scraps. They must become a people, and that starts with a plan. We head east, she announces, pointing toward the jagged peaks where the land is harsh but not barren, where the rivers cut through stone and the caves run deep. We rebuild, not as conquerors, as survivors. The words taste strange in her mouth, but they ignite a spark in the eyes of the younger orcs, those who have known nothing but war. For the first time, they dare to wonder, what else could they be? The jagged peaks of the mountains of shadow loom ahead like broken teeth against the sky, their slopes treacherous but free from prying eyes. Gorza leads her band through the winding passes, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence of a land untouched by the war's aftermath. The air here is sharp with the scent of pine and damp stone, so different from Mordor's choking fumes. Every orc carries the weight of the unknown, axes clutched tight, eyes darting, not from battle lust, but from the unease of a world without orders. Then, a sound cuts through the tension, a low, pained growl from a crevice ahead. A warg, its ribs visible beneath mangy fur, one leg twisted at a cruel angle. Blood mats its flank, and its yellowed fangs bear in a weak snarl as the orcs approach. Erzog hefts his club, already licking his lips. Meat's meat, he mutters, but Gorza's arm snaps out, blocking his path. She crouches, ignoring the warnings of the others, and meets the warg's gaze. There's no fear in those amber eyes, only defiance. The same fire that once burned in her own when Sauron's lieutenants barked commands. You're no use to us dead, she tells it, as if the beast could understand. With a sharp gesture, she commands two younger orcs to gather herbs from their meager supplies, then kneels beside the creature, her hand steady despite its snapping jaws. The others watch in stunned silence as she splints the leg with a strip of leather, smears a poultice of bitter greens over its wounds. Erzog scoffs. Since when do we nurse our prey? But Gorza doesn't look up. Prey runs, this one fights, and we'll need fighters where we're going. Days pass, the Warg limping behind them at first, then loping alongside as the herbs do their work. By the time they reach the high caves, it no longer snarls at Gorza's touch. When she offers it a share of their scant rations, the beast hesitates, then takes the meat gently from her palm. A murmur ripples through the band. Orcs don't tame, orcs don't share. Yet here stands a warg, its head lowered not in submission, but in something like trust. That night, as the others sleep, the beast curls at Gorza's feet, its breath warm against her boots. One of the younger orcs, a runt named Snaga, dares to creep closer. How'd you know it wouldn't rip your throat out? He whispers. Gorza studies the fire's embers. Didn't, she admits, but mercy's a knife too, just sharper in the right hands. Snaga frowns, turning the words over in his mind like a strange coin. The grumbles don't vanish overnight. Some still mutter about weakness, about the old ways. But when a rockslide traps 3 orcs in a narrow defile, it's the warg that claws through the debris, its powerful shoulders heaving until the last one is free. After that, even Erzog stops sneering. The beast becomes more than a tool. It's a shadow at Gorza's side, a living reminder that strength takes many forms. And when she walks through camp now, the whispers have changed. Not just captain, not just leader, something new, something unthinkable in the days of Sauron. She sees what we don't. The words are tentative, fragile as a fledgling's wings, but in the mountains of shadow, where every dawn is a fight against hunger and doubt, that fragile thing just might be enough. The fortress rises from the mountainside like the bones of some long-dead giant, its broken towers silhouetted against the twilight sky. Gorza runs a calloused hand along the weathered stone, feeling the cracks where centuries of wind and war have gnawed at its strength. It's far from the impregnable strongholds of Mordor, no lava moats, no gates of black iron, but the high walls still stand, and the narrow passes below make it easy to defend. This will do, she mutters, more to herself than the others. Around her, the orcs shift uneasily, their muscles twitching with the urge to smash rather than salvage. But when Gorza wedges her axe into her belt and hefts a fallen block back into place, they follow, their movements clumsy at first, unpracticed. Snaga, the young one with eyes too sharp for his age, darts forward, his fingers tracing the mortar Gorza patched with clay and crushed stone. Why, he blurts, then flinches as if expecting a blow for his boldness. But Gorza only wipes her hands on her thighs, leaving streaks of dust. Why what? She grunts. Why lift rocks when we could be raiding? Why dig latrines when we could be drinking? Snaga's voice rises, edged with frustration. The men of Gondor won't leave us alone forever. Why waste time on walls? The question hangs in the air, and for a moment, the only sound is the clink of stone on stone as the others pause, waiting. Gorza exhales slowly, watching her breath fog in the chill mountain air. You ever seen a pack of wargs turn on each other? She asks at last. Snaga shakes his head. They don't, not unless they are starving. but take away their prey, pen them in with no way out. She crumbles a bit of mortar between her fingers. That's when the weak ones get torn apart. And when the weak are gone, the strong start next. Snogga frowns, but Gorza isn't finished. We've been penned in our whole lives, Snogga, told what to hate, what to break. Now the cage is gone, and we've got a choice. Build something that lasts, or keep destroying till there's nothing left. Not even us. A gust howls through the broken battlements, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. Some of the older orcs glance at each other, their faces unreadable, but Snogga doesn't look away. Never built anything before, he admits quietly. Gorza barks a laugh, rough but not unkind. Neither have I, but first time's as good as any. She tosses him a chisel carved from warg bone. Make yourself useful. By moonrise, the fortress is still a ruin, but a ruin with a mended gate, a cleared well, and a watchtower sturdy enough to hold a sentry. The fires burning in the courtyard don't smell of burning flesh or siege engines. They smell of roasting fish, snatched from the mountain streams, of herbs even orcs can name now. No one sings, that's too much, too soon, but the grunts and growls have taken on a rhythm, almost like work songs, and when Snogga slips away to the highest wall, staring down at the valley below, his fingers aren't clenched around a weapon. They're tracing the outline of a fledgling garden plot, scratched into the dirt with a stick. Build or burn, he murmurs, testing the words. They don't taste like defeat. They taste like a beginning. The wind carries the scent of steel and sweat long before the scouts return, their faces grim in the flickering torchlight. Gondor's banners fly at the edge of the ash plains, their soldiers methodical as they sweep through Mordor's ruins, leaving no crevice unchecked. Gorza listens in silence, her fingers tightening around the hilt of her axe. The numbers are too great, their own forces too scattered. We fade into the rocks, she growls at last. No fires, no noise, let them think this place abandoned. Erzog slams a fist against the stone table, sending cracks spider webbing through the brittle surface. Coward's plan, he snarls, spittle flying. They'll hunt us like rats either way. Better to strike first. Take a few heads, make them think twice before. Before what? Gorza cuts in, her voice sharp as a blade's edge. Before they send twice as many. Before they burn these mountains down around us. She leans in, close enough for him to see the old scars webbing her neck. Marks from whips, not battles. You want to prove we're still monsters, fine. But monsters don't survive, they just die louder. The others shift, their eyes darting between them. Erzog's nostrils flare, but he says nothing, storming away into the shadows. The tension lingers like a poison, seeping into every muttered conversation around the camp that night. Gorza watches the sentries double their posts, her gut churning. She knows that look in Erzog's eyes, the reckless hunger of a creature backed into a corner, lashing out just to feel its own teeth. Midnight passes. The warg at her side lifts its head with a low whine, ears pricked toward the eastern pass. Too quiet. No grunts from Erzog's usual drinking circle. No clatter of dice. Just empty space where 6 sets of armor should be. Cold dread coils in her chest. She's on her feet in an instant, barking orders to rouse the others. We move, now. The trail isn't hard to follow, Erzog never was subtle. Broken branches, the stench of unwashed rage. And ahead, the glint of moonlight on Gondorian helms as a patrol winds through the narrow ravine. Erzog's voice rasps from the cliffs above, taunting, baiting. He doesn't see the archers already knocking arrows, the cavalry waiting just beyond the bend. Gorza's heart hammers. If they strike, it won't be a battle. It'll be a slaughter, and when the dust settles, Gondor won't stop until every last orc in these mountains is a corpse on a pike. She doesn't shout, doesn't warn him. Instead, she whistles two short, sharp notes, and the warg beside her looses a howl that echoes off the stone like a storm warning. The Gondorians freeze, scanning the darkness. Erzog's head whips around, his snarl dying as he spots Gorza's silhouette against the moon. For a heartbeat, their eyes lock across the distance. Then she raises a fist and slams it against her chest. Once, twice the old signal to retreat. Not an order, a plea. Erzog hesitates. His fingers flex around his club, knuckles white. The Gondorians are stirring now, torches flaring to life. One wrong move, and the night explodes into blood. Then, with a curse, he gestures to his followers, and they melt back into the shadows. The patrol moves on, none the wiser. Gorza doesn't breathe again until she's back in the fortress, facing Erzog across the fire. His shoulders heave, but the fury in his eyes has dulled to something colder. Shame. They'd have slaughtered you, she says quietly, and then they'd have come for the rest. He doesn't apologize. Orcs don't. But when he tosses a pouch of stolen Gondorian rations at her feet, proof he'd been scouting them for days, not just hunting, she knows it's as close as she'll get. The warg noses at the bag, then settles between them, a living barrier. The message is clear. Next time, there might not be a warning, and next time, she might not be there to give one. The first arrow takes an orc in the throat, Snaga's cousin, the one who always laughed too loud at crude jokes. The second thuds into the rock by Gorza's ear, close enough to sting her cheek with splinters. All around, the mountainside erupts in shouts and the metallic rasp of drawn swords. Gondorian voices ring out, sharp with command, but Gorza's focus narrows to Erzog's crumpled form, 20 paces ahead. His massive frame half hidden behind a boulder, one hand clamped over the shaft, jutting from his thigh. Blood seeps between his fingers, black in the moonlight. Fall back, she roars to the others, shoving a young warrior toward the safety of the cliffs. The warg snarls at her side, its ears flat against its skull, but doesn't bolt, waiting, always waiting for her signal. Erzog's followers scatter like startled beetles, some toward the fight, others into the dark. But Erzog himself doesn't move, can't. His lips peel back in a pained snarl as he fumbles for his axe, his muscles trembling with the effort. Another arrow grazes his shoulder, and he bellows a curse that echoes off the stone. Gorza should leave him. Every instinct honed in Sauron's pits screams it. Weakness gets you killed. Sentiment is a chain, but the memory of his hesitation at the ravine flares bright. That sliver of doubt, that flicker of something beyond blind rage. It's enough. She ducks low, darting forward as arrows pepper the ground around her. The warg lunges ahead, drawing fire, its snarls masking the crunch of her boots on gravel. When she reaches Erzog, his eyes widen not with gratitude, but raw disbelief. You, he spits, breath ragged, come to gloat over my corpse. She doesn't waste breath answering. Wrapping both hands around his arm, She hauls him up with a grunt, his weight nearly buckling her knees. An arrow winds past, tearing her cloak. "Move, you stubborn brute," she hisses, dragging him backward step by agonizing step. The warg circles them, snapping at the air, buying them precious seconds. Erzog stumbles, his leg giving way, but his fingers dig into her shoulder like claws. Not to push her away, to stay upright. "Why," he gasps, the word thick with blood and something else, something that isn't anger. Gorza risks a glance over her shoulder at the fortress walls, faintly visible through the dust and chaos. "Because we're not what they say we are," she growls. "Prove it." The last arrow misses by a hand's breadth as they vanish into the shadows of the pass. The wargs howl a defiant farewell to the night. Behind them, Gondor's torches flicker like dying stars, but no one follows. Not yet. The fortress walls hum with tension, thick as the smoke curling from dying torches. Erzog sprawls on a pallet of scavenged furs, his skin slick with fever sweat, his breath coming in ragged bursts. The arrow wound in his thigh pulses an angry red, the stench of infection clinging to him like a second shadow. Around the fire pit, the others watch, their faces unreadable in the flickering light. Some mutter about wasted herbs, wasted effort. A grizzled veteran named Razgash spits into the flames. "Should have let Gondor finish him," he grumbles. "Defiance gets us all killed." Gorza ignores them, her hands steady as she presses a poultice of bitterroot and spider silk to the wound. The warg curls at her feet, its ears twitching at every hiss complaint. Erzog's eyelids flutter, then snap open, his yellowed gaze locking onto hers with startling clarity. "Why save me?" he rasps, voice raw as scraped bone. The question hangs between them, heavier than any axe. She doesn't answer at first, tightening the bandage with a sharp tug that makes him grunt. "A pack is only as strong as its weakest member," she says finally, wiping her hands on her thighs. The words aren't gentle, they're a challenge. Erzog's fingers flex against the furs, his claws digging grooves into the hide. For a heartbeat, the old fire flares in his eyes, the urge to snarl, to lash out. But then his shoulders slump, the fight draining out of him like pus from a lanced wound. He stares past her at the others, at the way they lean in, waiting, not for blood, not this time, for something else. Snaga edges closer, a water skin clutched in his scrawny hands. When he offers it, Erzog recoils as if burned. Since when do runts play healer? He sneers, but there's no heat in it, just exhaustion. Snaga doesn't flinch. Since now, he shoots back, shoving the skin into Erzog's grip. The defiance is new, so is the steadiness in his voice. A murmur ripples through the gathered orcs. Razgash scowls, but even he doesn't reach for his knife. The rules are shifting under their feet, as treacherous as loose scree on a mountainside. Gorza watches it all, her face unreadable. She doesn't smile, doesn't gloat, but when Erzog finally takes a grudging sip, his eyes flickering with something that might be shame, or the first flicker of understanding, she nods just once. Later, when the others have drifted to their pallets, Erzog's voice stops her at the tunnel's mouth. "They'll never follow you," he mutters, staring at the ceiling. "Not really, we're not made for this." Gorza pauses, her silhouette framed by the distant glow of the forge. "Then what are we made for?" she asks quietly. The question lingers, unanswered, as she vanishes into the dark. Outside, the wind howls through the peaks, carrying the scent of snow and something else, something that doesn't smell like ashes for the first time in centuries. Winter claws at the mountains with relentless teeth, turning streams to ice and stripping the last stubborn berries from the bushes. The warg's ribs press sharp against Gorza's knee as she kneels beside it, scratching the thick fur behind its ears. Even the beast feels lighter these days, its hunger a silent third companion on every patrol. Behind her, the fortress echoes with the hollow coughs of orcs who have licked their cooking pots clean one too many times. The hunting parties return with less each dawn, a scrawny hare, a handful of bitter roots. Yesterday, Razgash's group came back empty-handed, their faces stormy with the kind of rage that festers in empty bellies. Snaga's voice cuts through her thoughts, softer than she's ever heard it. The hill folk, he murmurs, crouching beside her. His fingers trace the outline of a rusted dagger in the dirt, one of the dozen salvaged from Mordor's ruins. They trade sometimes, even with our kind. Not all of them run at the sight of fangs. Gorza's first instinct is to snarl. Men don't barter with orcs unless there's poison in the bread or steel at their backs. But then she catches the tremor in Snaga's hands, sees the way his collarbones jut like broken twigs beneath his armor. Desperation makes strange allies. The journey to the settlement takes 2 nights, the cold so fierce it steals the breath from their lungs. Gorza keeps the party small herself, Snaga, Erzog, though he limps still, and 2 others with sense enough to hold their tongues. They carry no banners, light no fires, just a sack of blades, their edges dull but serviceable, and a single unbroken shield, etched with the mark of Mina's Morgul. A relic, a bargaining chip. The men's village is little more than a cluster of huts, clinging to the mountainside, their roofs weighted with snow. Children scatter like startled birds at the first glimpse of green skin, but the adults stand their ground, axes and bows half raised. The air crackles with tension, thicker than the smoke from their hearths. Then a figure shoves forward, a grizzled hunter, with a beard like tangled brambles and eyes that miss nothing. Borvak, they call him. His gaze flicks from Gorza's face to the sack of weapons, then to Erzog's bandaged leg. You're a long way from your pits, he grunts. Gorza doesn't smile, doesn't blink. She upends the sack, letting the metal clatter at his feet. We're not here for war, we're here for grain. Borvak spits, considering. Around him, the villagers mutter, their words sharp with fear and something else recognition. These are not the soft folk of Gondor. These are men who know the taste of hunger, the sting of a hard winter. When Borvak finally nods, it's not with trust, but the weary pragmatism of those who have danced with death too often to fear shadows. 1 blade per sack, he counters, nudging a dagger with his boot. And you stay east of the Black Creek, cross it, and the deal's ash. Erzog's growl rumbles deep in his chest, but Gorza's hand on his arm stills him. Done, she says. The trade is swift, silent. No clasped hands, no shared ale, just hard eyes and sharper knives. But as they turn to leave, sacks heavy with barley and dried venison, Borvak calls after them, his voice rough as bark. That shield, he jerks his chin at the Morgul relic still clutched in Snaga's hands. Where'd you get it? Gorza doesn't look back. From a tomb, she says. We're full of those. The wind rises as they vanish into the trees, carrying the scent of snow and something else, not peace, not yet, but the faintest crack in the ice. Spring thaws the mountains in a rush of meltwater and mud, the first green shoots pushing through cracks in the fortress stones. The sacks of grain from Borvak's village sit near empty in the storeroom, but no one has starved. That alone is a victory. Gorza stands at the gate, watching the valley below steam in the morning light, when the warg stiffens beside her, a growl vibrating deep in its throat. A lone figure trudges up the winding path Borvak, his bow slung across his back, his face grim beneath the tangled beard. He doesn't greet her with the wary neutrality of their last meeting. His hands clench at his sides, his voice low and urgent. "They're coming," he says, and the words land like stones. "Gondor's lords have decreed open season on orcs, offering silver for every pair of severed ears." But worse, far worse, are the stories spreading like wildfire through the hills. Villages burned, children snatched, and always the same taunt scratched into the soot-blackened walls. Gorza sends her regards. Erzog lets out a bark of laughter when he hears it, but there's no mirth in the sound. "Clever," he mutters, pacing the length of the hall like a caged beast. Frame the one clan trying to stay out of the bloodshed. Turn Men and Gondor against us in one stroke. Borvak's eyes never leave Gorza's face. "The Uruk high," he says. "The ones who still wear Sauron's mark. They're not hiding in ruins. They're carving a path straight through the settlements, and they're making damned sure everyone thinks it's you." The air in the hall thickens with the scent of sweat and iron as the others shift, hands drifting to weapons. Snaga's voice cuts through the tension, quieter than the rest, but sharp as a blade. "Why warn us?" he asks Borvak. "Easier to let Gondor do your killing." The old hunter's mouth twists. "Because I've seen your lot skulking in the shadows all winter. And I've seen them, the Uruks. They don't just kill, they crucify. They leave the bodies where the crows can't reach, just to watch the rot set in." He spits onto the stones. "I know which devil I'd rather share a mountain with." Gorza's fingers tap a slow rhythm against her axe, a habit she picked up in the pits, when every breath might be her last. The choice is plain, and it's no choice at all. Fight and risk walking into a trap laid by Uruks and men alike. Flee and spend the rest of their lives hunted like beasts. Or she meets Borvak's gaze, where he hesitates, then pulls a scrap of hide from his belt, rough lines scratched into the surface. A map. Last attack was here, 2 nights past. They're moving fast, but they'll circle back, always do. Erzog snatches the map, his nostrils flaring as he studies it. Ambush territory, narrow passes, high ground. They're not just raiding, they're baiting us. A murmur ripples through the gathered orcs. Some nod, their eyes alight with the old battle lust. Others, the younger ones, the ones who have tasted something besides war, shrink back. Gorza sees it all, feels the weight of their fear like a second weapon in her hands. She could rally them with promises of blood and glory. She could lie. Instead, she steps onto the raised stone at the hall's center, the warg pressing close to her side. "We go," she says, "not because we owe these men a thing. Not for honor or vengeance or any fool cause worth singing about." Her voice drops, rough as gravel. "We go because survival's not just about staying alive. It's about choosing what we are, and I'll be damned if I let some relic of Sauron decide that for us? The silence that follows is brittle, charged. Then Snoga steps forward, his chin jutting out. How, he asks. Gorza's lips peel back in something too fierce to be a smile. We give them exactly what they expect. Outside, the wind howls through the peaks, carrying the scent of pine and something darker. The first whispers of the storm to come. The scent of burning thatch clings to the night air, like a curse as Gorza crouches in the underbrush, her fingers tightening around the haft of her axe. Below them, the ruined village glows with scattered fires, the silhouettes of Uruk, high moving between the flames like shadows given flesh. Their laughter grates against her ears, cruel, guttural sounds that echo through the hollowed-out husks of homes. A child's doll lies trampled in the mud, its stitching split open like a wound. Erzog shifts beside her, his breath hot with barely leashed fury. They're drunk on it, he mutters, his yellowed teeth bared. Not just killing, celebrating. Gorza's stomach churns, but she doesn't look away. She counts the sentries, notes the gaps in their patrols, the way their leader, a hulking Uruk with a serrated blade strapped across his back, holds court atop a pile of splintered furniture. His voice booms, bragging about the screams of the villagers, the way they'd begged. The words coil around her ribs like chains, but she forces herself to listen. To remember, Snoga creeps forward, his young face drawn tight with something beyond fear. We're outnumbered, he whispers. Gorza's reply is a blade drawn slowly from its sheath, the metal catching the firelight. Good, she says. They won't expect discipline. The attack comes not with a roar, but with silence. Her orcs move like smoke through the camp, slitting throats before the Uruks can sound the alarm. The Warg darts between the tents, its teeth finding tendons, its growls muffled against fur cloaks. They're not here for slaughter. They're here for the head of the snake. The Uruk chieftain senses the shift too late. He whirls, his greatsword cleaving the air where Gorza stood a heartbeat before. She rolls, comes up inside his guard, her axe biting deep into his thigh. He bellows, swinging wildly, but Erzog is already there, his club crashing into the Uruk's ribs with a sound like cracking stone. They fight not as mindless brutes, but as a pack, Erzog weathering the blows, Gorza darting in to strike, Snoga and the others cutting off escape. When the chains snap shut around the chieftain's wrists, his disbelief is almost comical. You shackle your own kin, he spits, blood frothing at his lips. Gorza leans close, her voice a whisper only he can hear. You're not kin, you're a message. The camp burns behind them as they retreat into the trees, the Uruk snarls fading into the night. Some of the younger orcs glance back at the flames, their faces unreadable. There's no victory in this, no glory, just the first step on a path, darker than any of them imagine. Erzog hefts the chained Uruk over his shoulder like a sack of grain, his limp barely noticeable now. What now? He grunts. Gorza doesn't answer. The wind carries the stench of blood and burning, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, not in hunger, but in mourning. The Uruk chieftain's chains clank against the frost-hardened earth as Gorza drags him into the village square, his sneers silenced by a gag of knotted rope. Borvak's people freeze mid-step, their faces pale as the moon above. A woman drops her bundle of firewood with a thud. A child whimpers, clutching his mother's skirt. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. Never in their lifetimes have orcs walked into a man's village without fire or bloodshed, let alone dragging one of their own as an offering. Borvac steps forward first, his gnarled fingers resting on the hilt of his hunting knife. His eyes dart from the bound Uruk to Gorza's unwavering gaze, searching for the trick, the trap. This changes nothing. A villager spits from the crowd. One monster's head doesn't wash the blood from the rest. Murmurs rise like smoke, but Borvac raises a hand, his voice cutting through the doubt. You've seen the killings, he growls, the mutilations. You really think this lot? He jerks his chin at Gorza's band, their weapons sheathed, their postures tense but not threatening. Could have done that and then marched in here bold as brass. Silence. Then slowly, the crowd parts as an elder emerges. A woman with hair like spun silver and eyes that have seen too many winters. She stops an arm's length from Gorza, close enough to smell the iron and pine resin clinging to her armor. Why, the elder asks, the word sharp as a splinter. Why turn on your own? Gorza doesn't flinch. They stopped being our own the moment they carved your children's names into the trees. The raw honesty in her voice makes even Erzog stiffen. No grand speeches, no pleas for mercy, just the ugly, unvarnished truth. The elder studies her a long moment, then turns to Borvac with a nod. The tension in the square eases just a fraction, but it's enough. A boy darts forward, pressing a wedge of hard cheese into Snogga's startled hands before scurrying back to safety. The gesture is small, fragile, but it cracks something in the air between them. That night, as Gorza's band camps at the village's edge under Borvac's wary watch, Erzog grinds his teeth beside the fire. This won't last, he mutters. Gondor's scouts will hear of this. They'll see it as betrayal orcs and men whispering in the dark. Gorza stirs the embers with the tip of her dagger, watching sparks spiral into the black. She knows he's right. A single act of trust won't erase centuries of fear. Somewhere beyond these mountains, Gondor's armies are sharpening their swords, their commanders drafting orders with her clan's name etched in ink and blood. But as the first snowflake of the season drifts onto her palm, melting instantly against her battle-worn skin, she realizes something colder, harder. Survival isn't just about escaping blades. It's about carving a place in the world so undeniable that even kings must pause before striking it down, and that will take more than chains or clever bargains. It will take a legend. The hall echoes with the scrape of stone benches and the restless clatter of armor as Gorza's war council gathers around the fire pit. Shadows dance across faces etched with scars and fresh doubts. Snogga perched on a stool too large for him, Erzog glowering at the flames, Razgash picking at a loose tooth with his knife. The air smells of charred meat and damp fur, but beneath it lingers something sharper, fear, unspoken and sour. Razgash breaks the silence first, slamming his fist onto the table hard enough to make the cups jump. Enough skulking, he snarls. Let's vanish into the northern wastes, where not even Gondor's hounds can sniff us out. Live like our ancestors did, free, not groveling at men's feet. A rumble of approval rolls through the room, but Snogga scoffs, tossing a pebble into the fire. Your free ancestors ate their own dead when winter came, he mutters. Razgash lunges, but Erzog's arm shoots out, blocking him with a growl. Erzog's voice is gravel wrapped in old wounds. The dwarves, he says slowly, they've no love for Gondor either. might see us as useful if we offer them something they can't mine or forge. Gorza watches the debate swirl, her fingers tracing the chipped edge of her axe. The dwarves are proud, stubborn, but they respect strength, and they never forget a debt. It's not impossible. Then Snogga leans forward, his eyes glinting like polished obsidian in the firelight. Or, he says, we send envoys to Gondor itself. The laughter that follows is jagged, disbelieving. One of the younger warriors spits into the flames. They'll hang our messengers from the white tree before the words leave their lips. But Snogga doesn't flinch. Maybe, he admits, but what if we don't send orcs? The room stills. Even the warg lifts its head, ears pricked. Borvak's folk know us now. The elder's grandson carries that doll we salvaged from the Uruk camp, like a treasure. Let them speak for us. Let men tell Gondor we're not the monsters they remember. Erzog's snort is half amusement, half disbelief. Since when do orcs hide behind children's toys and soft-hearted hunters? Gorza finally speaks, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade through fog. Since survival demanded it, she rises, the firelight casting her shadow tall against the wall. Not the hulking brute of Sauron's legions, but something leaner, sharper. A leader, not a conqueror. We've spent centuries being what the world expected. Now we rewrite the tale. The silence stretches, taut as a bowstring. Then, one by one, the nods come reluctant, thoughtful, daring. Even Razgash grunts, though he won't meet her eyes. Outside, the first snow of the season begins to fall, blanketing the fortress in quiet. Somewhere beneath the white, the earth waits, hard and unyielding, but spring always comes. The morning mist clings to the mountain passes like a shroud as Gorza fastens the crude leather pouch around Snogga's neck, her fingers lingering on the scrap of hide inside, a map inked with Borvak's shaky hand, marking safe routes through Gondor's outer lands. Erzog shifts beside them, his armor polished to a dull sheen. For the first time in memory, the hilt of his club wrapped in fresh hide to hide the bloodstains. They make an unlikely pair, the wiry young scout with eyes too sharp for his years, and the battle-scarred brute who still walks with a limp from the arrow wound. But that's the point. Remember, Gorza murmurs, tightening the last strap on Snogga's pack. You're not pleading, you're proving. Erzog grunts, adjusting the makeshift banner tied to his back. A strip of black cloth, stitched with a single white handprint. The old mark of parley, used by mountain tribes long before Sauron's shadow fell. And if they skewer us on sight, he rumbles. Gorza meets his gaze without flinching. Then we die knowing we tried more than slaughter. The journey south is a gauntlet of held breaths and narrowed eyes. Farmers freeze mid-field at the sight of them, their scythes clutched like weapons. Children are snatched from doorways, their screams trailing behind shuttered windows. Snogga keeps his hands visible at all times, his voice carefully neutral as he calls out at each checkpoint, announcing their purpose in the common tongue, clear but not groveling. Erzog says nothing, his presence a silent challenge, a living rebuttal to every tale of mindless orc savagery. When the white walls of Minas Tirith finally rise before them, gleaming like a blade in the sunlight, even Erzog's steps falter. The guards at the gate cross spears before they've come within 20 paces, their faces rigid with disgust. Filth, one spits. Dare you stain the king's city with your stench? Snogga doesn't cower. He reaches slowly into his pouch and withdraws the elder's token, a child's doll, its yarn hair still singed from the Uruk raid. "We bear witness," he says, holding it up like a talisman and a request. The guards laugh, cruel and sharp, but the commotion draws attention from above. A figure leans over the battlement, his hair silver gilt in the dawn light. Faramir's gaze lingers on the doll, then flicks to Erzog's unarmed hands, to Snogga's steady stance. Something flickers in his eyes, memory, perhaps, the hobbit's odd mercy in Cirith Ungol, the look of creatures not born evil, but bent. "Lower your weapons," he calls down, his voice cutting through the jeers. Let them enter under guard. The court buzzes like a kicked hive when they're marched into the great hall, nobles recoiling from their path, as if green skin were contagious. Faramir sits stiffly on the steward's chair, his face unreadable, but his fingers tap a restless rhythm on the armrest. "Speak," he commands. Erzog steps forward first, his voice a graveled rumble. "We're not here for pardon. We're here to show you an enemy you've missed." He flings a severed Uruk helm onto the marble floor, the sigil of the red eye still visible beneath the grime. Snogga moves next, his words deliberate as he lays out the raids, the false flag killings, the deliberate stoking of hatred. He doesn't beg for mercy. He doesn't promise peace. He simply states facts, his voice never wavering even as the whispers grow louder around him. "We can keep hiding," he concludes, "or we can hunt the real wolves before they tear out more throats." "Your choice." Faramir's expression doesn't change, but his fingers still there tapping. The silence stretches, thick enough to choke on. Then, with a slow exhale, he leans forward. "Guards," he says, "bring wine. Our guests look thirsty." The gasps that follow are louder than any battle cry. The hall's vaulted ceiling swallows Snogga's words as he stands before the throne, his voice steady despite the sea of hostile faces. "We ask no lands," he says, fingers brushing the singed doll at his belt. "Only the right to live without a knife at our backs." His common tongue is rough but clear, each syllable deliberate, a far cry from the guttural snarls Gondor expects of his kind. The nobles murmur, their silks rustling like agitated leaves, but Snogga doesn't waver. He speaks of empty mountain fortresses that could shield Gondor's flank, of Uruk bands that still prowl the passes. Not pleas, proposals. Erzog looms beside him, a mountain of scarred muscle and silent defiance. He wears no armor today, only a tunic stitched with the white handprint, an old tribal mark of truce. His arms are crossed, his yellowed tusks bare just enough to remind them all, this is not surrender, it is negotiation. The steward's scribes flinch when he shifts his weight, but Faramir merely steeples his fingers, his gaze flicking between the orcs, battered knuckles, and the doll's soot-stained yarn. Treachery, a lord in ermine trim, surges to his feet, his jeweled dagger clattering to the floor in his haste. "Next you'll invite wolves to guard the sheepfold." Laughter ripples through the court, brittle and sharp, but Faramir doesn't smile. He leans forward, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade through fog. "And yet, my lord, did we not once say the same of the Rohirrim, or the dwarves of Erebor?" The hall falls still. Even the torches seem to hold their breath. When Faramir speaks again, his words are measured, each one a stone laid carefully on a fragile bridge. "Swear to it," he says, "not to me, to the land itself. Forsake the shadow's ways, patrol the eastern passes, stand when Gondor calls. He pauses, letting the weight of the offer settle. Do this, and the mountains are yours. Not as conquerors, as guardians. A murmur erupts, some outraged, others calculating, but Snága doesn't react to the chaos. His eyes lock onto Faramir's, and for the first time, he bows. Not the groveling kneel of a beaten foe, the slight dip of a warrior acknowledging an equal. Erzog follows suit, though his spine stays rigid as ironwood. Far to the north, Gorza watches the horizon from the fortress walls, her fingers curled around a scrap of parchment, borne by Borvak's swiftest runner. The wind carries the scent of thawing earth and distant rain. The words are sparse, they listened, but they blaze brighter than any war drum in her chest. She turns to the warg beside her, scratching the thick fur behind its ears. Guardians, she murmurs, testing the word. It fits strangely, like a sword reforged into a plowshare. But the clan gathers below, their faces upturned, waiting. Hope is a fragile thing, she thinks, but so was Mordor once, and look how long that shadow lasted. The first drops of spring rain begin to fall, washing the soot from the stones. Somewhere beneath the earth, seeds stir. The fortress gates groan open at dawn, revealing the first caravan from the lowland villages, ox-drawn carts, piled high with grain sacks and iron ingots, their drivers eyeing the rebuilt walls with a mix of wariness and wary curiosity. Gorza watches from the battlements, her fingers tracing the fresh mortar between the stones. This is not the crude patchwork of winter. These walls stand straight and strong, their edges clean, their watchtowers manned by orcs, who no longer slouch under the weight of chains, but stand tall under the weight of purpose. Below, Snága steps forward, his hands empty of weapons, his voice carrying the careful cadence of practiced diplomacy. The villagers tense, but the elder's grandson, the one with the singed doll tucked in his belt, grins and tosses the boy an apple. A small thing, a beginning. Erzog stalks the perimeter like a storm given flesh, his club now as much a tool as a weapon, clearing landslides, breaking ice-clogged streams, once even driving off a mountain cat that had stalked a shepherd's flock. The shepherd's gratitude is stiff, his thanks muttered through clenched teeth, but the loaf of black bread left at the fortress gate that evening speaks louder than words. Not all hatreds fade easily. In the taverns of Gondor's border towns, whispers still call them tame monsters, Sauron's leftovers. But when a band of rogue Uroks raids a mill near the Black Creek, it's Gorza's riders who cut them down before the king's soldiers even saddle their horses. The miller's daughter, her apron stained with flour, presses a bundle of honey cakes into Erzog's hands as he departs. He stares at them like they might bite back. Snága's days are spent poring over maps with Borvak and the Gondorian outriders, their fingers tracing routes through the high passes where shadows still linger. He learns the smooth lies of politics, the art of trading favors without losing ground. When a pompous lordling dismisses him as the tamed orc, Snága doesn't snarl. He smiles sharp as an unsheathed dagger and recounts, in flawless common tongue, exactly how many Uruk throats his tamed kin have slit that season. The lordling pales. Faramir hides a laugh behind his hand. Gorza sees it all from a distance, her presence a steadying force. She trains the young ones not just in axe work, but in the fragile arts of trust. How to read a man's eyes without flinching, when to sheathe the blade to keep the peace. The warg, grown sleek on spring game, shadows her steps. Its loyalty, a silent rebuke to those who claim beasts cannot learn kindness. Some nights, when the watchfires burn low, she climbs to the highest tower and studies the stars, their cold light unchanging. The road ahead is long, littered with old scars and older prejudices, but for the first time in her life, the path is theirs to walk, not Sauron's, not Gondor's. And that is a victory no sword could ever win. The seasons turn, the fortress thrives, and in the quiet moments between patrols and treaties, Gorza allows herself a thought that would have been unthinkable in Mordor's ash-choked pits. This is not survival. This is living. Time weathers even the sharpest blades, and Gorza is no exception. Her braids, once dark as Mordor's slag, now gleam silver at the temples, and the scars on her knuckles have faded to pale seams. But her eyes, those still burn. From the fortress walls, she watches the valley below, where orc children chase goats through terrace fields, their laughter bouncing off stones once stained with blood. The village elders no longer flinch at green skin in their markets. The Gondorian patrols nod as they pass, their hands resting lightly on sword hilts, not gripping, not anymore. Acceptance, she's learned, is a quieter thing than victory. It doesn't roar, it settles. Then the riders come. Their cloaks are gray as the northern storms, their faces grim beneath elvish helms. Even before they speak, Gorza knows. The wind carries the scent of old magic, the kind that predates Sauron, the kind that twisted the first orcs from stolen flesh. The withered heath stirs, their captain says, his Sindarin accent crisp with urgency. Something buried has woken. The words slither through the hall like winter air. Morgoth's fingerprints never truly fade. Erzog, his own beard now threaded with white, slams his tankard onto the table. Let the elves piss themselves over ghosts. He growls, but his heart's not in it. Snogga, no longer a runt but a counselor with ink-stained fingers, unrolls a cracked parchment. They're not asking, they are warning. The map shows a valley swallowed by shadow, its edges crawling with marks Gorza hasn't seen since the pits, spiked sigils, the language of the Elder Dark. The debate that follows is shorter than she expects. The young ones, those who have never known chains, are eager to prove their worth beyond the mountains. The old warriors, though, they remember the stories whispered in the slave pens, things that make Uroks seem tame. When the vote comes, Gorza doesn't raise her hand. She stands. We go, she says, not for Gondor's thanks, for the right to say we chose this. The march north is a tapestry of strangeness. Elvish archers trading smoked venison with orc hunters, dwarven axemen grudgingly adjusting their stride to match Erzog's limp. The first time an elf offers Gorza a whetstone for her blade, the silence around the campfire is so thick, you could choke on it. Then the warg, old now, its muzzle frosted with gray drops, a freshly killed hare at the elf's feet. The gift is too deliberate to be instinct. The elf blinks, then bows. The battle, when it comes, is nothing like the wars of the past. No ranks of faceless soldiers, no waves of mindless fury. The thing that rises from the heath is all teeth and whispers, its form shifting like oil on water. It sings in voices stolen from the dead, promising power, vengeance, a return to the old ways. Some orcs waver. Gorza doesn't blame them. The song is sweet. It knows their hunger. Then Snogga does something reckless. something no orc in history has ever done. He sings back, not in black speech, but in the crude, lilting common tongue of the mountain clans. A ballad about stubborn rams and crooked fences, the kind Borvak's grandchildren taught him. The absurdity cracks the spell. The men laugh, the dwarves grunt, and Gorza charges, her axe biting deep into the thing's pulsing flank. They win, not easily, not without loss, but they win. When the dust settles, the elf captain kneels not to her, but beside her, pressing a cloth to the gash on her forearm. His fingers are deft, his touch light. "Your people fought well," he says, as if commenting on the weather. Gorza studies the mingled blood on the battlefield, black and red, silver and green, and thinks of the stories they'll tell. Not of monsters or heroes, just warriors standing together. The road home is lined with torches. Not for them, not at first. The villagers had expected only Gondor's return. But when the first orc shapes emerge from the dark, the torches don't gutter. They rise higher, brighter, until the whole valley glows. No cheers, no fanfare. Just light, unwavering, chasing back the last of the shadows. Gorza doesn't smile, but that night, for the first time in memory, she sleeps without her axe beneath her pillow. The battlefield reeks of charred earth and spilled magic, the air thick with the keening of wounded soldiers and the distant thunder of collapsing stone. Gorza's vision swims as she drags herself forward, her fingers clawing through mud slick with blood, black and red alike. The young Gondorian archer pinned beneath the fallen war beast is barely more than a boy, his face pale beneath his helm, his fingers still twitching toward the snapped bowstring at his side. She doesn't think, she moves. Her body slams into the shuddering creature, just as its jagged talons descend, her axe biting deep into its underbelly. The impact sends white-hot pain through her ribs, but she holds on, twisting the blade until the thing shrieks and collapses. The boy scrambles free, his eyes wide with shock and not at the monster, but at her. Then the world explodes. The blast hurls her backward, her armor scattering like broken pottery. When she lands, the sky above is a swirl of smoke and unnatural stars. Her breath comes in ragged gasps, each one tasting of copper and ruin. Distantly, she hears the boy shouting for help, feels the vibration of boots pounding toward her. But the edges of her sight are darkening, the pain fading into a strange, heavy warmth. Faramir's face appears above her, his silver-streaked hair matted with grime, his eyes shadowed with something deeper than grief. He says nothing at first, just presses a gloved hand to the worst of the wounds, though they both know it's too late. When he finally speaks, his voice is softer than she's ever heard it. "You saved him," he murmurs, "a life for a life. Gondor will remember." Gorza coughs, her laugh more a wheeze than sound. "Not for Gondor," she manages. The boy is hovering nearby, his hands shaking as he clutches her fallen axe, like he's trying to give it back. She meets his gaze, nods once, then her eyes find Faramir again. "Tell them orcs can be more." The words hang in the air, fragile as a spider's silk. Faramir's jaw tightens, but he bows his head not in pity, but respect. Erzog crashes to his knees beside her, his massive frame blocking out the chaos, his hands hovering like he wants to shake her or steady her or both. "Who leads now?" he demands, his voice raw. "Who holds the damn fools together?" She doesn't hesitate. You do, and Snaga. Her fingers twitch toward the warg slumped panting at her side, its muzzle streaked with blood not its own. You're not what he made us. The last thing she sees isn't the battlefield, or the sky, or even the faces of her kin. It's the boy, the Gondorian, lifting her axe high, his voice cracking as he roars her name into the fray. Somewhere beyond the pain, beyond the dark, Gorza smiles. The dawn, when it comes, finds no statues raised, no songs sung in her honor. Not yet, but the fortress gates stand open, and the mountain paths are alive with footsteps, orc and man and dwarf alike, marching not to war, but to a future she carved with her own 2 hands. And that, perhaps, is enough. The tale of Gorza's clan doesn't end with her last breath on that bloodied field. It spreads like wildfire through the taverns of Gondor, where soldiers who once cursed her name now raise their tankards to the orc who stood between a boy and death. In the mountain halls of the dwarves, smiths pause their hammering to recount how her axes held the line at the withered heath. Even the elves, ever wary of time's fleeting stories, let her name slip into their ballads, not as a villain, but as a thorned rose that grew from cracked stone. Generations pass. The fortress Ghorza rebuilt becomes a way station for traders and travelers, its gates never barred to those who come in peace. Snaga, now silver-haired and sharp-tongued as ever, sits in council with men and dwarves, his laughter echoing through halls where once only growls rang out. Erzog trains the young ones orc and otherwise, not just in the weight of a club, but in the heavier weight of restraint. The warg's descendants curl by the hearths of shepherds, their growls reserved for true wolves, not lost children. Yet old fears die hard. In distant cities, mothers still hush their babes with warnings of orcs in the dark. But sometimes, a child will pipe up, "But Mama, what about Gorza?" And the story spills out of the chieftain who chose mercy over might, who carved a home from hatred's wreckage. The details blur with each retelling. Some say she wrestled a dragon. Others claim she bargained with the valor. But the heart of the legend remains, an orc who dared to imagine more. High in the mountains, where the wind whistles through the fortress towers, a single banner flaps against the dawn, a white handprint on black cloth, faded but unbroken. Below it, a young orc girl practices her letters in the dirt, her tongue poking out in concentration. She spells her name first, then, clumsily, another, Ghorza. An elder passing by stops, his scars twinging in the cold. "Why scribble that old ghost's name?" He grumbles. The girl doesn't look up, because, she says, "Someday, I'll make them say mine too." The elder blinks. Then slowly, he kneels beside her, his gnarled finger tracing the letters anew. Above them, the banner snaps in the wind, its shadow stretching long and lean across the stones. No longer a mark of parley, but a promise.